What up, y'all? Welcome to another episode, a special episode, we back kind of episode of Championship Rounds podcast. It is the preview to we hoping the fight of the year. Shit, we hoping the fight of the century, forever, whatever we could get out of it. Uh, Spence versus Crawford. But before we get into particulars, predictions, thoughts, let me introduce the brothers on the panel first. Going to my homie, intothedome.com, Into the Dome podcast. And as always, he is certified to kick your ass. You got a belt, and he ain't your daddy's belt either. You know what I'm saying? Tony from intothedome.com. What's good, bro?
Hey man, what's good, fellas? And look, man, it's been a minute, man. So yeah, man, good to hear from you guys, man. I'm excited about talking about some boxing tonight, man. So I'm good. Everything is good.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
Indeed. And over in the other corner, we got the homie host of Pound for Pound podcast on Fight Game Media. It's a boxing podcast. He's killing it. He just put out a new episode you need to check out. Robert Silver, what's good, man? How you doing, bro?
What's up, Vegas? What's up, Tone? What's up, boxing fans?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And casuals, y'all cool too. Y'all cool from time to time, you know. But if you are listening and you're on Twitters, right? Even though we don't put out the regular monthly podcast, there's just certain fights where I just felt compelled, like, yo, we got to at least put our thoughts out there, you know, about this because this is big. We had been talking about this since probably 2018.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And now it's almost here. Hopefully nothing happens. But Championship Rounds podcast on Twitter. I live tweet during the fights. Robert scores, puts his audio up. We retweet that. I watched a couple of other bullshit tweets go by from the boxing world. And it's good fun half the time, you know, especially some of the fights that have happened recently. But let's get right into the big thing, man. Let me just read a quick intro from Showtime just for those who need the details. In a matchup that will go down in boxing history as one of the most significant title fights of all time, unified WBC, WBA, and IBF welterweight world champion Errol the True Spence Jr. will take on WBO 147-pound world champion Terrance Bud Crawford for the undisputed welterweight championship of the world on Saturday, July 29th, in a highly anticipated Showtime pay-per-view or Fire Stick, if you know what you're doing. Clash from T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Brothers, we here now. You know, no more talking. You know, it's etched in stone. I just want to ask y'all this question, this preliminary question, because we've been waiting for a minute for these guys to get it done. You know, and now it's done. Robert, let me come to you first. Do you think, because we've talked about this in the past about, you know, get this shit done and just make it happen. We want to see it. Do you think Tank and Ryan Garcia's fight and the hype and I guess the pay-per-view buys also kind of pushed them to get this shit done?
You know, I didn't think about that question. That is a great question. You know what? There's probably something to that. I would not be surprised. But from what my sources have been telling me the last 6-7 months, since we stopped doing this podcast, we haven't done this in over 6 months. Dudes that I know in the boxing world have been telling me that Errol and Terrance wanted to fight. It was all a matter about money. It's all about dollars and cents. There was no such thing. You know, people on social media on both sides, the Terrance fans and the Bud fans or stands and the Errol stands were accusing each other of ducking. Look, I'm gonna put this out here. Neither one is afraid of anything. One man almost died from a car wreck that ejected him out of his seat, and he fell face first onto the concrete floor, and he was on death's doorknob, and I thought his career was over. We all thought his career was over.
Yeah.
We even said on this podcast, that's it.
Yeah.
He came back less than 6 months later and looked as good as he ever did. The other dude was shot in his head and less than 3 months later was fighting again. Don't
Mm.
tell me that one of these dudes was scared of each other. That was bullshit.
Right.
It was all about the money. Terrance Crawford went and got a $10 million purse because he didn't like what Al Heyman and PBC was offering him.
Mm.
People criticize him. Oh, he's ducking Errol. Errol hasn't fought since Udanis Ugas last April because he wanted to get this fight.
Yeah.
Right? They were throwing that washed up Keith Thurman at him. Nobody want to see that.
Nope.
But Errol and the dudes told me that Errol and Terrance had kept in contact. That's why they weren't tweeting like they used to, because they wanted to get this fight done. The fight got done. Hallelujah. And I think you have a point there, Vegas. I didn't think about it. They saw the success that Garcia and Tank had and said, you know what? Let's get this done. Because at the end of the day, whatever they decided to sign for, I don't know what the monetary figures are,
Right.
but the pay-per-view and the international rights and all the sponsorship that they're going to get is going to make up for whatever the preliminary salaries are for the fight.
Yeah, as it should. You know what I'm saying? Because how often do we get to be this excited? Because Tank and Ryan Garcia was excited.
Yeah, but we knew what was going to happen.
Right, we knew it was going to happen,
and it happened.
It had to happen.
This fight, we don't know. And regardless, and you know what, I'm tired of both. That's why I have muted Spence and Crawford name on Twitter, because their fans are crazy. Each one saying one's gonna murk the other one. What are you looking at? Do you know that? I know you're a fan, but come on, let's stop this nonsense.
Yeah, it's
about that later.
Crazy.
Yeah, they worse than Tupac and Biggie fans.
Yeah, Jay-Z and Nas fans.
Jay-Z and Nas fans, yeah. Oh my God. What you say, Tone? You think there was any influence there, or you think, they got it done because they were always just gonna get it done?
I kind of fall in line with what Robert was saying. I think that over the last year, they've been in constant communication.
Yes,
I believe it's been a lot of politics, because at the end of the day, it's all about the Benjamins, like Puff said. You know what I'm saying? So they had to get all of these negotiation tactics and going back and forth, I believe, behind closed doors. Then you are talking about, like Robert said, sponsors and just there's a lot of different big business factions involved with a fight of this magnitude. So it's not going to just get signed overnight. There's a lot of things to be discussed when putting something like this together. You know what I'm saying? So,
including broadcast rights, the whole nine. Yeah.
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
Pay-per-view percentages, what the arena, all kind of stuff. A lot of different contractors involved with stuff like this, man. This is big. This is huge. But I do believe that, even though I felt like it was going to get signed at some point, I do believe when you're looking at Tank and Garcia and those pay-per-view names, which is huge. You're looking at the Lomachenko fight against Haney, and I am talking about the numbers of that fight. I'm just talking about the excitement that they brought to boxing, and then you're talking about Josh Taylor and all these other guys. Fights are coming up, but I think that boxing right now this year is on fire. I believe that the pressure is on. This could be one of the best years in the last 5 to 10 years of boxing.
Tone, to piggyback on what you just said, June 29th they fight. In Tokyo on June 25th, two of the best fighters in the world are also fighting in Naoya Inoue and Stephen Fulton. In my lifetime, I've been watching boxing since 1977. I've never seen where 4 of the top 10 fighters in the world are fighting in the same week.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. In
2 different continents.
Yeah. So I believe that the fact that I believe that trying to get the money right was the biggest thing, because just like Robert said, and I said this, and you guys know I've said this years ago. I said top-notch fighters, they aren't afraid of each other. It's promoters, it's money, it's timing, it's all of those things. These guys are gladiators. They're not physically afraid of the other guy. It's other factors that keep these fights from happening sometimes, and politics are irritating in boxing sometimes, because we don't get the matchups we want, or we get them too late. But I feel like a year or two would be too late now. You have to do it right now to get everything out of this fight financially. So they had to do it this year, regardless of those other factors. But those other factors, I think, helped them sign that paper even faster.
You know what's the scary part about it, and it's the one thing I hate about boxing today. This fight ain't gonna start till like 1 a.m., man.
Yeah.
They're gonna make sure every product placement, every sponsor, every celebrity is talked to.
They
Stephen A.
don't.
is gonna be up there like,
And
yo,
then and then and then they're going to fill the undercard with a bunch of fights, 10 12 round fights where uh it's probably going to go to distance because they're going to do that on purpose to kill the clock.
yeah,
Yep.
I'm gonna be in the 12th round with sleep because that's how these shits been. Fighting sleep like a motherfucker.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah,
And
yo, you know
also
what?
the fights occurring on the West Coast, so they'll be
Right,
walking in the ring 10 o'clock Vegas time.
right. You know what, Robert? I'm glad you brought up the undercard because I had been bitching about that for a long time. And you know, when you on YouTube and you watching some of these classic fights, then you realize some of these fights, like, damn, this classic fight was the undercard to
Right.
Several of the
another
fights
classic
that
fight.
we've scored on this, like we did the Azuma Nelson Jeff Fennick robbery, right? Speaking of, that's a
Mhm.
robbery. That was on the undercard of Mike Tyson versus Razor Ruddock. That was an undercard fight.
That's
Right,
crazy.
right.
Yeah, it's crazy. Today that'd be a pay-per-view headliner by itself.
By
Right.
itself. Right. Exactly. Uh, so all right, so let's talk about the matchup, right? We all
Mhm.
say, and those that are listening, even if you're casuals, you always hear styles make fights, and I think what's going to make even our predictions, because we've been really good with them, but what's going to make them interesting is because this is tough to call if you
Yes.
know the fighters.
Yes.
So Robert, analyze because you know how you get down. You perfect
Mhm.
for this. But for the people and for us, kind of break down Errol's style, Terrance's style,
Mhm.
and then how they meet and what could potentially happen.
All right. Of the two fighters, Terrence Bud Crawford is the more scientific fighter. He's the better boxer. He's the better natural boxer. When you
Mm,
look at these two fighters, he can beat you on defense and outboxing you. Errol can't. Errol is the more aggressive
mm,
fighter. He's the bigger puncher, without a doubt, and he's the better body puncher. And if you look at Errol's style reminds me of a hybrid of a Meldrick Taylor and a Shane Mosley, where they claim to be a boxer, but no, they're an aggressive boxer. They're aggressive. He's an aggressive boxer where he tries to walk you down behind that big right jab and hooks to the body, and he's got power in both hands. While Terrence will start the fight off one way, conventional, and then second or third round, he turns southpaw. He does this all the time. It's going to be a chess match. If it's a chess match, that would favor Terrence Bud Crawford. Errol has to work the body, which is the way he does. Errol Spence in the 21st century is one of the top five greatest body punches of the 21st century since 2000. Errol
mm,
Mhm.
breaks people down by the body. You don't see anybody do that with Terrence Bud Crawford because they're afraid of his incredible counterpunching ability. So it's going to be a lot of adjustments made inside the ring
mhm.
before the fight even starts. Will Terrence Bud Crawford do what he normally does, switch to southpaw, or would he stay orthodox? All depending on how much success he has counterpunching against Errol Spence. And what happens when Errol catches Bud, because Bud's never really been hit by anybody. All right. He's dominated. He's dominated. Both these men have dominated their opponents. Neither one of these men loses rounds. Neither man has ever lost. Neither man's ever come close to losing. Right.
Yeah.
So what happens when they face adversity for the first time? And I know Bud's been knocked down and slightly stunned, but he wasn't Floyd Mayweather against Shane Mosley trouble. All right.
Yeah.
It was, he quickly recovered. All right. And the same thing with Errol Spence. I know he was hurt early in his career, and Ugas hurt him for a moment in their fight last April, but he's never been in on that Larry Holmes against Ernie Shavers level where he has to hold on for his life. Neither man's ever faced that type of adversity. This will probably be the fight where one of these guys will face that, if not both. Who will be the one to overcome that adversity. And whoever does, maybe that's the guy who's going to win.
Absolutely. Tone, what do you think, man? You know these two boxers very well. We've imagined it forever, and now they're about to step in the ring, man. How do you think this plays out with their two different styles?
Look, man, this is the ultimate chess match, man. You know what I'm saying? And I think this is one of those times where an adjustment is going to have to be made. I do believe that this will be each one of the hardest fights. I think they're both going to teach each other some deep waters because I think it's going to start slow. Though. I don't think when people think, oh man, first, second round is going to be they're going to start slugging it out. No, 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 no. They're both too smart and they both know the other opponent is too dangerous to be reckless. You know what I mean? It'll be a couple of rounds where they'll be punching, but they'll be tactical and trying to play it smart until the fight break out. I do believe by the fifth or the sixth, someone will get popped real good, and I think at some point they will face it off. Terrance, man, he is more skilled naturally in terms of conventional boxing. So if he can just kind of stay on the outside and use his hand speed, then that could be trouble for Errol Spence. Now Errol, to me, he reminds me. I was looking at some Marvin Hagler recently, and some of them rounds of Marvin Hagler go to the body a little bit. It kind of reminded me of Errol a little bit, man. And
great comparison.
Yeah. And so I think that if he can start getting Terrance on them ropes, Terrance got to stay off them ropes because if he get on the ropes too much, Errol is coming to that body. You know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna tell you, I think he's the best body puncher in boxing right now.
I said, top 5 in the last 21 years, 23 years, without a doubt.
Easily. With no question about it. So I just think that this is one of those fights the fans are going to win, man, because if you just take fanboys out the way from both sides, this is one of those situations where you go in, I wouldn't bet $1 in Vegas on this fight.
Hey, one thing I want to add, Tone, and Tone is on the money with everything he just said. I forgot to bring this up. Neither man has faced a guy as great as who they're going to face that night. None of their opponents come close to who they're facing that night. Not Errol Spence. The best fighters Errol Spence beat, Ugas, Kell Brook, they're not pimples on Terrance Crawford's ass. And vice versa. Terrance Crawford has never beaten anybody in the same universe as Errol Spence.
Not even close.
This is like Leonard versus Hearns, like Ali versus Frazier. When they fought for the first time, they're facing the best fighter they ever fought in their lifetime. Both fighters.
Yep.
It's not even close.
Yeah, I agree with y'all, man. I feel like, again, shout out to my brother. When he asked me about it, I'm sitting here telling him everything that Errol Spence is as a fighter and then everything that Bud is as a fighter and having a tough time drawing a conclusion because it's like you just have to see what happens when that bell rings because, again, one fighter is a pressure fighter. The other one's a great counter puncher. Is it going to play out that way? Is the pressure fighter going to come out and try to box like he did against Mikey Garcia? Remember that shit?
Right.
I hope not, right? Because that changes things. But yeah, again, great matchup between two fighters. This is the perfect example of styles make fights, and both men are in their prime. And it's been since 2018 since we've been looking at this as the matchup that needs to be made. And shit, now it's here, man. So, all right, y'all. So y'all at home listening, you got the tail of the tape from us. But now we're going to get into predictions. Like, what do we think is actually going to happen? How is this going to end? Robert, I'm going to come to you. How do you see this fight going?
Gun to my head, I can't make a prediction right now. This is impossible.
Right.
I broke down what could happen. And Vegas, you make a great point where with adjustments, maybe the counterpuncher, Terrance Crawford, becomes the aggressor. Or Errol, the aggressive boxer puncher, starts going from the outside. Anything's possible in this fight. And also, both men have great corners. Derek James, one of the best trainers in boxing. Bo Mack, even though he's 1,000 pounds, is an excellent trainer for Terrance Crawford. So gun to my head, I still haven't come to a conclusion. I have thought about this since 2018 when Terrance Crawford moved up from junior welterweight to welterweight. Okay. I have been looking at this left, right, center. This fight, these two guys, despite what their fanboys claim for each fighter, they're on the same level. This is as even a fight as you'll ever see in the history of boxing, period. I mean, this isn't Mayweather versus Manny because I don't give a damn when they would have fought. Mayweather was always going to dominate Manny because Manny was tailor-made for Mayweather. Right?
Tailor-made.
No matter what Manny's fans claim, oh, they should have fought 10 years earlier. 10 years earlier, he would have got knocked the fuck out. Yeah, it would have been worse. Right. No, this isn't Floyd against anybody he fought because nobody Floyd ever fought was on his level. Period. End of story. No matter what they try and tell you about Manny Pacquiao. Yeah, Pacquiao's an all-time great. Second greatest fighter of his era, but the distance between 1 and 2 was very far. Right?
Yep.
There is no distance between these two guys. They're that great. In my pound for pound ranking, they're number 2 and number 3. Only Inoue I have number 1. He's fighting that week also. Talked about in Tokyo. So I'm gonna table my prediction for later. I'm gonna have to make one a week before the fight, but right now, I can't call this, man. This is harder. This is harder than Chinese arithmetic.
Tone, what you thinking, man? You see this fight ending a certain way, or is it too close to call?
Let me say this though. Over the last since they announced the fight, I went back on YouTube, man, and I watched several of their highlights again, several of their fights again, just to get me, back in tune, just so I could just kind of dissect, what I'm saying, the fight, and this is one of the few times, man, I sat here, man, for hours watching it one Saturday evening. I'm like, I absolutely have no idea. That's why I said a few minutes ago, I wouldn't bet $1 in Vegas, man. I got to keep my money. Because every other fight that I've seen in my younger years all the way up to now, I predicted a winner months before the fight. Whether I was right or wrong is irrelevant. I felt like somebody had an edge. You know what I'm saying? Like, depending on who come out their comfort zone or something like that, or because they're gonna push each other farther than they've ever been pushed before. You know what I mean? So I absolutely, when I say 50-50, man, I really mean that 50-50. Now I know for anyone listening and say, okay, y'all got to give us something. If a gun is to my head, it's a boxing match, Terrance Crawford will win the fight on points by staying on the outside and using his fast hands down boxing. If it turns into a slugfest, Terrance Crawford has no chance, and I believe he'll mess around and get stopped by the 10th or 11th round by getting broken down by Errol Spence. So
what you just saying is 50-50 right there.
Yeah. And that's still 50-50. That's still 50-50. If these are the ifs again, right? If they do Terrance type of fight, he wins. If they do Errol type of fight, he wins. Who can force them to do that type of fight is the reason why I have no freaking idea. But Vegas, man, help me and Robert out, Vegas. What do you think?
Tone, you just said exactly word for word what I said to my brother earlier today. I literally just went through, you start thinking about Errol and people he just beat down and like, well, shit, if he does that to Crawford, he probably getting a KO. Then you think about Bud and you like, damn, but he moving and switching and sneaky power, especially to the body.
Crawford is stronger than people think.
He is. Right. So
he's 39 over 30 knockouts. He knocked 30 people out.
Right, exactly. So yeah, it's tough to call, man. I don't even know. I think I'm gonna feel like this even on fight night.
I'm gonna feel like this when the opening bell rings.
Right. Look, those who are listening, one thing like true boxing fans, when that bell ring, we're gonna be silent than a motherfucker watching that. Especially that first round. We're gonna be mad silent, we're gonna be tweeting everything because you're trying to watch the game plan unfold and see what the approach is. and it's just going to be great to see. Like, to your point earlier, Robert, about the undercard. I just hope we get some level of excitement, so we're not like dead and got to wake up after the 16th national anthem.
Look, the
Uh,
budget is all on Spence and Crawford, so the undercard will probably be filled with
oh yeah,
title bouts of. I don't know what the undercard's going to be because they haven't announced it, but you'll have PBC fighters fighting guys that have no shot at beating them. All right.
right,
There'll be some showcase fights.
Yeah,
right.
but there's the only people making real money that night are going to be Errol Spence and Terrance Bud Crawford. That's where the budget is going.
Yeah, as it should be, because you got to applaud those brothers for making this happen, and now it's here. As a bonus, since we talked about it, and it's also kind of a major battle that we also want to see. We in Fulton, man. What's your prediction on that, Robert?
Fulton has to, first of all, kudos to Stephen Coolboy Fulton because he's going to another man's country to defend his title.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen anymore. It used to happen all the time back in the day. That doesn't happen anymore. All right, he's going to foreign land to face a monster. All right, so kudos to Stephen Fulton, and I've said this the last 2-3 years. The only guy that has a shot on the planet of beating Noe is Stephen Fulton.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I see this fight unfolding is Fulton, also a lot like Errol Spence and Meldrick Taylor, is that he's an aggressive boxer puncher when he has to be. I think he can't outbox a Noe because that jab is too. You cannot outbox a jab like a Noe's. All right, so like a Thomas Hearns, you gotta force the action like No Needle did in their first fight, and then No Needle did in the second fight and was almost murdered. Fulton has to show and know he can take his punch. He's got to go inside. He's got to beat that body. He's got to try and wear down a Noe, and he's going to have to try and knock a Noe out. Because if it's a close fight, he's not winning a close fight in Japan in the Noe.
No, he's not. Nope.
So he's got to knock out a Noe or beat him up. And you're not beating up a Noe. You can maybe knock him out, but you're not beating up a Noe. But Fulton has a great chin. And my prediction is the monster by 12-round decision in a very heated contest in which you might see him get knocked down once or hurt, but because he has the heart of a champion, both men do, he's going to utilize that jab, and you're going to see Inoue box safely by decision. So I got Inoue, and most people go, oh, what are you talking about? Inoue is a boxer who can punch. He's not a slugger like casuals think he is. I got Inoue winning by decision because of the superior jab, but Fulton is going to give him hell, and I wouldn't be surprised if those of you guys who aren't up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, because that's when this fight's going to happen, wake up and find out that you have an upset in Fulton knocking out Inoue. Anything's possible, but gun to my head, I got Inoue winning by decision.
Tone, what do you got? Who you have for this fight?
Well, first, I agree with Robert in terms of, you go to another foreign land basically to defend your title. We just don't see that like we used to see it. That's why I enjoy Andre Ward Super 6 when everyone was fighting in each other's country and stuff like that. That's very unique. Mm-hmm. That was unique for me at the time for that tournament. I wish we had some more Super 6s.
Andre was going to Europe.
Yeah, he went to Europe. Absolutely. I think he fought. I think he fought Arthur Abraham in his hometown. You know what I'm saying? But
he could have fought Arthur Abraham and Arthur Abraham's house, and Arthur Abraham was going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. So I give Fulton credit. I actually think that this would be the toughest fight Inoue has so far.
It's the best fight. Look, another one. The best fighter either man has ever faced in their career.
I agree. Mm-hmm. I do believe that you're gonna have to knock Inoue out in his hometown. He's not gonna lose by decision. If it's close, he's still gonna win. You know what I'm saying? This won't be one of them times where the challenge got to beat the champ. It's just I believe that he'll stick to the decision. That being said, Fulton's gonna have to put his chin out there a little bit and try to go for probably a late knockout. And I think that unfortunately that's when he's gonna get caught with something from Inoue. Inoue is not a slugger, but he's a very hard puncher, and he will slug if he has to.
He's the best. He's the best puncher in boxing. He's the
Yeah.
best puncher in boxing. He's the best one knockout puncher in boxing
So
with
I'm
either
asking.
hand. So you're right
Right.
about that, Tone. Yeah.
So I'm calling 11th round TKO for a no.
I kind of have it like Robert, but I also agree with you, Tone. I just feel like, this is going to be a challenge for both fighters. Some adjustments will have to be made. Fulton, I could, the first couple of times I watched him fight, you could see his heart. Like he's not afraid. He's not phased.
He's a Philly fighter.
Yeah, he does not second guess anything, which is great for his confidence against a monster, right? So and I think it's just going to be a lot of back and forth, but I think it's going to go to a decision, and I know he's going to win, and maybe there will be a knockdown or two, which would be dope.
And I think there's a rematch clause, so we're going to see this twice.
I was thinking that I was going to say it, but I was like,
hey, speaking of rematch, now is it true that there could be a potentially part 2 of Crawford and Spence in December?
Yes. There's a rematch clause that I believe either fighter can execute after the fight's over. And why not? You making a lot of money in the first fight. Unless you get murdered by a first round knockout, which is not happening, ladies and gentlemen. Ain't nobody blasting the other guy out. Stop the bull.
Right.
We're going to see a second fight. You got a rematch clause in the contract.
It's only right, man. And as long as we don't see no bullshit.
Who are they going to make more money fighting?
Right.
Nobody.
Right? There you go.
This isn't a couple of years ago where you had a couple of contenders. It pretty much
only guy left at welterweight that after these guys fight each other that they haven't fought is Boots Ennis. And Boots Ennis right now for either fighter is not enough money for the risk, right?
Yeah.
So they still have to build Boots Ennis up. And you know what? You got these two fights, and then next year you could see a potential Ennis versus whoever escapes out of these two fights winning.
I believe that might happen.
Yeah, and that's easy to be made because Boots is under the same management as Spence, and now that Crawford signed with PBC, so it's easy. It's easy to make that fight, but you got to have I agree with you, fellas. It's going to be a 2-fight series.
Yeah, feed Thurman to Boots. Help him clean out.
Thurman will never fight Boots.
He will not. He will not.
Right. Just feed him to him.
Because Thurman don't mind a big payday.
Yeah.
Spence or Crawford get his ass kicked. He don't mind that.
But not against a guy that's going to decimate him for a tenth of what he would have made against Errol or Crawford.
Exactly. That's not going to happen.
Right.
We ain't got to worry about that happening. That's not going to happen.
No more checks after that shit.
Yeah. Thurman ain't fight. Thurman will fight somebody like Amir Khan, somebody.
Oh no.
Look, Thurman is not fighting anybody unless he gets big bucks because he's
done.
He's done.
Right. Which is so weird, like how do you think you deserve a big fight? Like where the fuck you been?
I don't know.
Look, crazy.
When he got his ass kicked by an 80-year-old Manny, he should have retired right then and there.
Yeah, man. So crazy. Well, what do y'all think about this matchup? Terrance Bud Crawford, Errol the True Spence, finally happening July 29th, Saturday, July 29th on Showtime pay-per-view. Can you call it one way? Are you stuck in the ways we are? Nevertheless, follow us on Twitter. We're going to be tweeting like crazy. You already know. I'll probably be on my 14th glass of whiskey or some shit.
Hey, by the way, before you continue, Vegas, tickets sold out in about a half hour.
Holy shit! I thought about it.
You had dudes waiting on the computer, on the Ticketmaster website, waiting hours before the tickets went on sale, thinking all they had to do was click a button. Because I read all the horror stories on Twitter and I was laughing. And
it was hilarious.
Out of 1,000 tweets, I think one dude got tickets.
Damn.
Less than a half hour. Look, you have the most anticipated fight in boxing. T-Mobile Arena is 16,000 seats. There's no way in the world. This was the type of fight you could have put in the Las Vegas where the Raiders play. You could have put that in the stadium.
Could put it in the stadium.
You know.
Yeah. Damn, that's crazy. Well, when you think about it, this is boxing. We know bots bought up half of them tickets.
Oh, and those tickets probably gone by now.
Yeah. But they don't give a fuck. They're not trying to police that shit. They just
No, they
the
don't care.
tickets
Look,
sold that shit.
the promoters in the arena, they don't care. They getting their money right away. They don't give a
Right.
fuck about.
Right.
They got the money. They sold out.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Right. Robert, before we head out, talk a little bit about your podcast, Pound for Pound.
All right. I have the Pound for Pound podcast, comes out every Wednesday. You could do it's on all the platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google, Podcast Addict. You put the description in the search engine, Pound for Pound, or Fight Game Media. Probably Fight Game Media Network is easier. Um, it's it's a 3-segment podcast. I use this podcast as a basis for my podcast as far as the format, where the first part is I review the fights that occurred the past week, and then I make my predictions for the fights coming up. Second part is a Q&A. I get great questions by listeners from Twitter. You want to ask me a question, hashtag Ask Rob Silva, and I will answer. I answer any question. You want to ask me relationship advice, which I don't believe it, but I'll give you my 2 cents, whatever you ask. And then the third part is my historical overview of a fighter or a fight. I had a project where I just ended where I did my 45 greatest fighters of the last 45 years. My new project is my 25 greatest knockouts of all time. And the episode that just dropped is the life and times of Andre Ward, in which I do my historical overview of Andre, first segment. Second segment, I do a watch along where I rebroadcast his win over Sergey Kovalev, the second fight. And part 3 is my review of the Showtime documentary that came out last Friday. I highly recommend people to watch that documentary before listening to my pod, because I don't want to spoil anything, because there are things in that documentary that even the hardest of hardcore boxing fans didn't know happened in Andre's life.
Yeah, man. It sounds good, man.
Yeah.
Check it out. Tone, what you got going on in the Into the Dome world?
Well, the Dome podcast will be back sometime in July. Took a little hiatus. Busy on some other projects, man. But excited to bring that back. So as of right now, just of course talking music on Twitter, sharing these flowers with all these great musicians from every genre, and that's just to get me back going as I start back with the Dome podcast next month.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to read great articles, historical overviews of legends like Prince and Sade and Quincy Jones and Minnie Riperton, into the dome.com.
Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. And for those who don't know, but you should know, me and Tone have a podcast that we have over 70 episodes called That Time in Hip Hop. And we did a 50 years in hip hop, about 2.5 hours of us just going through the history with special guests, Yintz. But we got another episode coming up really soon, also to commemorate 50 years of hip hop. We're going to be doing the greatest stories, top 10, our top 10 greatest stories in hip hop.
Man, you could do a top 1,000 and go on. That could be a series you guys do.
Right, it could be a series, but you know what? Sometimes you got to commit to a number just to spark the conversation around it.
Right, and there's at least 500 that could battle for that top 10 spot.
Oh yeah, and some artists is they got a good 20, 50 themselves.
Exactly. Oh, by the way, shout out to Yincy from New Orleans. I call him the New Orleans Saint, the only real New Orleans Saint that I know of. What's up, brother?
Shout out to him.
Yeah, great dude, great father, and happy Father's Day to all those people out there that might be listening to this show right before Father's Day.
Right, man, and happy Father's Day to you too, man. Both of y'all.
Thank you.
Likewise, brother.
Same to you, baby. Same to you.
All right, y'all. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to Tone's podcast. Subscribe to That Time in Hip Hop. Pound for Pound Fight Media. And please, man, I know you ain't hear me saying it in a while, but stop getting knocked out and getting recorded and shit, man. I watched two dudes in a wheelchair throw hands.
What I want to know is who the fuck is recording this shit?
Right.
You just standing there and let one dude beat the hell out the other dude, and you just
right. Even though those overhand rights were pretty accurate from the wheelchair, I ain't gonna front.
Nobody safe anymore out here.
If you're recording two dudes in a wheelchair, stop it.
Right. They stopped when the police pulled up, though. It was like, all right, you sure you want to keep doing this? Shit. All right, y'all. Be safe. Peace.